So you're spending hours and hours scrolling through patches or tweaking sounds or trying to perfect your mix only to end up frustrated, overwhelmed, and at the end of the day, you haven't finished a cue. But you're not alone. Because as a composer with years of experience with writing cues for Discovery Channel or CBS or whatever, I personally know how easy it is to get stuck in the weeds and how much time that really wastes. But, here's the thing. In the world of production music, time is money and efficiency is absolutely key. So what if I told you that there are very simple strategies that you can use to save hours on your next cue without sacrificing quality or without feeling like you're robbing yourself of creativity? So in today's episode, we're talking about all the ways that you can streamline your workflow to write smarter and stay productive. Whether it's reusing sounds from old cues or simplifying your effects chain or using reference cues to guide your structure, I've got 6 proven strategies to help you get your cues done. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Crawford. Welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, your weekly insight into the world of production, library, and sync music. Whether you have thousands of placements or brand new to the industry, I promise you, you are in the right place. As always, a huge word of thanks to the family, friends, and neighbor subscribers of 52 Cues who keep all of this happening. If you want to learn more about how you can not only support 52 Cues here, but score a ton of subscriber-only perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, pitching to real music libraries, and a ton more, then be sure to tune in a little bit later in today's episode. Speaking of today's episode, it is the first episode of 2025, so we are in our first full week of the year. Got everything cooking over in the community. We've got Expedition 52 going on. And by the way, if you are curious, Expedition 52 registration stays open until the 15th. So we have a little under a week. You could still join us. That is our year-long composer quest with weekly briefs and communities and being teamed up in smaller teams. And so, yes, I am using the metaphor of mountain climbing to stay motivated all throughout 2025. If you want to sign up for that, then you can head over to expedition52.com and join. We would love to have you. But that has kicked off this week. We have Mastermind cranking up this week, and registration for Mastermind is closed. So the next Mastermind session will open up in the summer. I think June is when that is going to shake down. But also, here in the new year, we are settling into our new format. And I would love your feedback as you listen to the episode. I'd love to hear from you. So what we're going to be doing today, in addition to the topic where we're going to be talking about ways to work smarter and not harder. So that's coming up here in just a minute. But we're also going to listen to a community cue. And this week we are featuring a cue called Circuit Breaker by 52 Cues family member Timothy Ackermann. This is a cyberpunk instrumental cue, which was written up for a taxi brief. So we're going to take a listen to it, and I'm going to give feedback like I would in our feedback sessions or like I would for during a feedback video. So you definitely want to stick around for that. But first, I want to play for you one of my cues. This is a cue called The Ego Has Landed, which is a funky dramedy type, modern comedy type cue written for like a dating show or for a scene in a cooking show or something like that. Just reality TV dramedy. So we're going to get, pizzicato strings and marimba with a little bit of ukulele, electric piano, and more. So let's take a listen to The Ego Has Landed. So that was The Ego Has Landed, kind of a modern comedy, dramedy type cue for dating shows and the like. For you family and friends subscribers, be sure to check out a complete cue breakdown of this cue where I unpack the sound, some of the harmonic choices, and the other creative choices that I made in putting this cue together. That's going to be showing up in the cue breakdowns here very, very soon. So today, I want to focus on one of the most common struggles we production music composers seem to face, which is how can we streamline our writing process without sacrificing creativity, or more importantly, without sacrificing quality. I mean, whether you've been at this a while or just getting started, it's easy to still fall into the traps of overthinking, overproducing, or getting stuck in the weeds of mixing and mastering and deliverables. These can really slow your process. They can drag down your efficiency. And we know that in the world of production and library music, efficiency is vital. So today, I'm going to share 6 strategies that can help you save time, stay productive, but ultimately deliver better cues. So number 1, and these are in like no particular order. They're just brain dump order. Number 1, reusing sounds from an older cue. This is one of my favorite hacks, because if you've written a cue before that has a mix that you're happy with, then why not start there? You're happy with the sounds. It worked. If they've gotten published or even if they've gotten placement, why wouldn't you just open up that session, strip out all of the MIDI, and write something entirely new using the same sounds and the mix? You don't have to go through and audition patch after patch after patch. You don't have to really, get super deep into all of the EQing. You don't have to fiddle with levels because so much of that is already done for you. Now, this doesn't mean that you're just copying yourself. You're just using the same sonic palette as a starting point. It's like using the same, box of crayons for another drawing, or using the same color palette for a new painting. You'd be surprised how much faster you can work when you've already got the technical side dialed in with using the same mix, and you've got the sound palette dialed in, because auditioning patches is really one of the things that I find takes away my productivity and my workflow and my flow state. So that leads us to number 2, which is stop searching for that perfect sound. I mean, let's be honest. How many times have you sat there scrolling through endless patches, auditioning sound after sound after sound, waiting for one to just kind of jump out at you? Maybe you're using the audition process to spark your creativity. I mean, I totally get it. Finding the right sound feels super important. And it is. It's not that sounds don't matter, but here's the thing. That perfect sound, might not even exist to begin with. So instead, try this. Settle for something that's 75 to 85% of the way there. Find it, use it, get into your flow state, but start writing, because odds are the sound that you picked is going to work just fine. And you know what? If it doesn't, That's cool. You can always go back and tweak it later after the writing done. But I would put money on the fact that the sound you started with is going to end up being great. I mean, obsessing over sounds isn't creativity. I mean, it can be a form of procrastination. And if we're being real, it's often like undiagnosed writer's block in disguise. This auditioning all of these patches, just no. It's a real drag. It is toxic to flow state. And so find a sound that works and use it. And if it's still a point of botheration when you're all but done writing, then, and only then, go back and change the sound. Okay, so continuing on this theme of finding sounds, the third way that I think that we can work smarter, not harder, is spend a little bit of time organizing your library and building presets. I mean, if you want to stop wasting time searching for sounds altogether, then spend some time up front and organize your library. Know what you have. Build presets, save patches that you know work for you, and then keep dipping into that well. You don't have to find a new marimba sound for every single cue that uses marimba. And be sure that you're not just bored with the sound before you start diving into your patch list and trying to find another one. So like, for example, if you write a ton of dramedy cues, then save a handful of pizzicato strings or marimba patches or percussion sounds or whatever that you know work, and just use them. Right? So you're probably going to go in and label your favorite patches, organize them into folders or mood or genre or function, whatever works for you. I know in Logic we can save patches and save presets. I'm not sure how it works in several of the other DAWs, but when you do this and you've done some work on the front end, when you sit down to write, you're not just scrolling through a jungle of presets, but you've already got your go-to tools ready to go. But note that I didn't say add all of these sounds to your template, because in the world of production and library music, we write so many different genres that I have found having a template with all of these sounds baked in, I end up like removing sounds I don't need more so than I do using the sounds, and our sound palette changes so frequently that unlike film composers who are using the same orchestra over and over and over from project to project to project, having a template of sounds doesn't necessarily make much sense. But if we have a template with built-in send effects, and our template has all of the key commands and structure and just like visual organization, then that can be fantastic, because we're ultimately looking at saving time. We're working smarter, not harder. So if you spend some time, make yourself a template that includes all of your frequently used send effects like reverbs, delays, compression, or whatever, then that's going to save a ton of time. I mean, I have reverbs, delays, and other effects baked into my template, and I use this same setup for like 98% of my cues. I mean, regardless of genre, regardless of mood, I've used the same set of reverbs, which are all from Spaces 2. I use the Reynolds Hall, and I have, I think, 6 different reverb positions that I've just baked into my template. And whether I'm writing a dramedy cue or a hip hop cue or an EDM cue, or a modern comedy or a trailer or whatever, I'm going to start with those basic reverbs. And this solves a couple of problems. First of all, I don't have to go diving into my catalog trying to find a reverb that I like or don't like. And it also puts all of the reverbs into the same space. And this is what I really like about using Spaces 2, because they are impulse responses taken from all over the same orchestral stage. And specifically, it's the Reynolds Hall in Las Vegas. I mean, and they have other concert halls that they have recorded, for impulse responses and convolution, blah, blah, blah. But I like the Reynolds Hall. And so, yes, I might have a setting that says percussion, but in my mind, that also means kind of far away. Then I have like high strings, which are kind of close. And so by using the same presets time after time and using the same reverbs that are all recorded in the same space, then they all blend really, really well together. Now, a side note for this trick, you're going to want to go into your actual patch library and dry it out as much as possible. So if you're bringing BBCSO and Symphobia 1 from Project Sam, if you're trying to blend those together, they're recorded in different spaces. They have different amounts of reverbs, different mic positions and everything. So you want to go in, dry out, like in this example, the strings as much as possible, and then take those strings into the same reverbs. So back to template. Having a reliable template doesn't just speed things up. It also helps you stay consistent. When you're delivering multiple cues on an album, or if you're delivering, multiple cues to a library, you want consistency. It's vital in production music because libraries and editors, they want cues that sound polished and they sound cohesive, and then they know that they can depend on your mixes to sound great every single time. So if you're not already using templates, I highly recommend one. Again, I don't use a template that has a bunch of sounds baked in, but my template has all of the tools I need set up in a screen set, and having the different tools that you can access all baked in has really, really helped me out. I mean, I even use a template anytime I give feedback. And that's not to say that you can't change it. I mean, even if you tweak your template for each project, if you're starting with a solid foundation, that's going to shave off a ton of time in your workflow. All right. So that's kind of some DAW-y suggestions for you, but let's dig a little bit more and let's talk about some ways that we can work smarter in the writing process. And the first is less is more. I know, but when it comes to like layering and when it comes to processing, less is more. I mean, you don't need to add hundreds and hundreds of tracks to write a great cue. And I know production YouTubers like Andrew Wong and Jacob Collier create these massive layered masterpieces, but you know what? You're not writing the next pop hit. You're not writing an intricate symphony. You're not writing a cue that needs to impress YouTube audience. You're writing a cue that needs to support a scene. So instead of stacking dozens of layers, focus on smart arrangement and smart orchestration, using dynamics and musical development to create interest and variety. Because a cue that breathes and evolves, not just wrote layer upon layer of stacking, I mean, that's always going to feel more engaging than one that's bogged down with just unnecessary sounds. And the same goes for effects and post-processing or processing. I mean, do you need 12 plugins on every single channel? Do you need, compression and gluing and all of that? I mean, I'm sure you saw that one video with the big name producer with a mixing chain that looks like it belongs in the cockpit of the space shuttle. But at the end of the day, that's not what you're doing. You're writing for sync. You're not producing a Grammy-winning album. And keeping your processing simple is going to help with this. And when you do, ask yourself, when you go to add a plugin, is this solving a problem or is it adding value to your mix? Now, that's not to say that We can use less process as an excuse. It's not to say that production music is less than those things. It's more about the return on the investment of time made in. If you're writing a piece of music that not only is going to be in the background of a scene on House Hunters or Black Ink Crew or Is It Cake, but it's also, not going to net you a ton of cash. So when Beyonce's producers spend a month dialing in the drum sound, they know that it's going to be held up to a very, very excruciatingly high standard, and that they are going to get a multi-decade return on that investment of time. I mean, it's a real balance, and I don't want you to mishear me. I'm not saying that we can get away as production music composers with our mixes not sounding as good. The challenge is getting our mix sounding as good as humanly possible while balancing the time put into creating that mix. Because if you are spending 2 weeks dialing in a mix, think about how much time you are spending, and are you able to recoup that time? It's just something to think about. And then finally, the sixth and final hack is use reference cues for form. I mean, I think this is one of the most practical tips I can offer here, using a reference cue to specifically guide your structure. One of the biggest challenges and, one of the biggest decisions we make as composers is what comes next. What choice do I make now? But if you can find a cue in a library that's similar to what you are trying to write, you can study them. When do the instruments come in? When does the energy build? When do things drop out? What is happening next? And using a reference to just guide your arrangement process. It doesn't even have to be the sounds. It doesn't have to be the harmony. You might not even use other materials from the reference. It could be just the form. And so I don't think we should be afraid to copy the form of the reference. And I want to be clear. We're not talking about stealing melodies. What we're doing is that we are using the structural framework to guide our compositional decisions. It's not only going to help you save time, but it's also going to teach you how successful cues are built. Because if a cue is published, if a cue has shown up in a library, then it's a safe bet that there have been at least a few gates to letting that cue happen. Let me say that another way. If a cue shows up and it's published, that means it's probably been registered with the PRO. It might even been sent out and pitched. And at that point, there have been at least one decision maker who said, this works. You do this enough, you study these forms enough over time, you're going to internalize these patterns. And then writing to form will start becoming second nature, to where you actually don't need to reference anymore. So at the end of the day, streamlining your writing process, it's not about cutting corners. It's not about cheating. It's not about making something that can get away with being a lesser quality. It's about being smart with your time and your energy. In production music, where quantity and quality both matter equally, finding ways to work more efficiently is a survivability skill. It is essential. So whether you're reusing sounds from an old cue, settling for a close enough patch, organizing your library, simplifying your production process, all of these strategies are going to help you write faster. It's going to help you write better and with less frustration and that feeling of imposter syndrome. Because remember, again, it's not about doing less work. It's about doing smarter work. And at the end of the day, the best cue is the one you actually finish. But what are your thoughts? Do you have any hacks? Do you have any tips to work smarter and not harder? I would love to hear from you. Please let me know in the comments below. I do read all of those comments, and it would be great to hear from you. So we're going to take a quick break, and you're going to hear from an alternate version of me tell you about how you can join 52Qs. And then when we come back, we're going to be checking out a brand new Q written by a member of the 52Qs community. We'll be right back. Every week I talk about how this episode and the podcast and the community, the channel, would not be possible without the amazing support of our family, friends, and neighbors, subscribers of 52Qs, who do pay their actual real-life money to keep all of this going. And in addition to being thriving members of the community, as well as supporting me and Shannon and everything that we're doing here, they also receive extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video archives, weekly Q breakdowns, production music almanac, living ebook, and the opportunities to submit to real music libraries. Now, it's free to join 52Qs. You can just go to 52qs.com and sign up, be a member of the community. We would love to have you. It will always be free to join the community. But if you've been watching, or if maybe this is your first time, but if you're wondering, is there a way to kind of level up my production music skills in the industry, meeting like-minded, super friendly, very generous composers? Then why don't you think about subscribing? Memberships start at around $4 a month, and we would love to have you. Again, that's 52qs.com. I am so excited to bring back to the podcast a feature that we had for a really long time, then it kind of went away, but really excited to bring back Q reviews, where I feature and give feedback on Qs submitted from the 52Qs community. And today we are starting out with Timothy Ackermann, a family member of 52Qs, who submitted a cyberpunk instrumental Q called Circuit Breaker. And this is for a taxi brief. Now, what I don't know if that brief has long since closed. And Timothy, if that's true, my apologies for that. But Taxi was on the search for a bunch of cyberpunk instrumentals needed for a UK-based music library. Let's see, they're looking for cyberpunk instrumentals bursting with raw energy and plenty of electronic grit. Submissions should have energized, danceable rhythms and dynamic arrangements that build as they progress. Cyberpunk instrumentation, think distorted synths, pulsing synth bass, hard-hitting drums, in the stylistic wheelhouse of the references. Now, I don't have the references, and that's totally fine, but we're looking 2 to 4 minutes for an instrumental, or a Q, 90 seconds to 2 minutes, non-faded, all of that. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to take a listen to it, and then I'll give my thoughts on the other side. All right, that was Circuit Breaker from Timothy Ackermann. Tim, thank you so much for sending this along. As far as, the brief and nailing the instrumentation and the raw energy and the danceable kind of EDM style, I think you absolutely nailed it. Love the sounds of these. I think it's really working out. It's kind of leaning into the kind of dubsteppy kind of thing, which, I thought dubstep was just like dead and buried until on the Super Bowl this past year on CBS, they unveiled a dubstep remix of the NFL on CBS theme, and they've been using it all season long. And I gotta say, there's still a visceral energy to this type of sound. Going from the top here, I would make sure that you have at least 200 milliseconds at the top. It seemed to kind of start almost. I couldn't even tell if there was a click, and there's a little cymbal tap at the top or something. I think we probably could have gotten away with that being like a wah or something. Just the downbeat just feels a little clipped off. I thought this was fantastic. Do be careful. We've got some kind of high resonances going on here, right around 2400, 2300 hertz or so. This is probably some effect or some sound designy thing that's causing this, but definitely something to watch out for. You're probably, I know me, I'm not hearing that, but I'm seeing that. So I would watch out there. Love the big low bass. I think it could be even wider, especially here at the top. Probably could have done a little bit more whoosh, something just to have some kinetic energy into that downbeat. Yeah, I think that really hits hard. And one note that I made is I think all the way through our snares could have come out of the mix a little bit. I feel like they could have been a little bit more transient. They could have bit a little more. Yeah, like the snare is just getting lost in here, in my opinion. And if you haven't already, make sure that you're working with some side chaining. And I would exaggerate it, like really, really lean into that side chain. You want to pull out all of the EDM-y, dubsteppy tropes that you can. And I think that's going to work really, really well. And that little siren, I think is very, very, very cool. I wanted there to be a little bit of stereo something with it. And I don't know if it needed to kind of work side to side. I thought that could have been cool just to bring a little bit of motion to it. And I wouldn't, hard pan it or anything. Don't do that. But I think some kind of imaging on that. And you pump that also through a side chain. I think that could work really, really well. So not only is it kind of pumping in and out, but it's also kind of moving around the stereo field. Yeah, and here I think we absolutely could have had more of a transition, more some whoosh or some transitional energy to really sell the fact that we're going into, in this case, going into a breakdown. And I think we could do a little bit more with transition effects pretty much all the way throughout. So kind of right here. Right? You don't want it to feel like you're pulling a punch there at the end. Right, it just kind of stops. But if we treat it more like a wave rising and then hitting the shore and whoosh, That's kind of that's how my metaphorical mind thinks. I would I would put that through the filter and let that filter slowly open up over the course. Again, super tropey, happens all the time in EDM, but lean into it. I like that little. I would watch. There's some spiky resonances there. I would be careful with. Might need to tamp that down, but I would duck some of those high frequencies back, but bring them up in the mix. Yep. Yeah, and ironically, I would drop the riser, the noise sweep. I would drop it during that little shikukukuku. Yeah, just have that in the clear, just like we did here. In fact, let's see what that would sound like. I'm just gonna grab this, and let's just see. Let's see. Let's drop that over there. All right, so let's move that up just a couple of beats. Versus, let's go back to the original here. All right, and here's with the new part. All right, so here it's just a little bit more in the clear, and it makes that drop when the instruments all come back, makes it a lot more effective. Yeah, absolutely. Put that bass through a side change. And that snare. Deesh, deesh. And let's hit the downbeat here. Give me a boom. Give me a nice solid button or stinger ending. Boom. And then let it release. Do keep an eye on the audio tail. It feels just a little long, right? A little long. So I would clean that up. But Tim, thank you so much for sending this along. I really, really do appreciate it. And I really enjoyed that. I got to tell you, it feels so good to be listening to your cues again on the podcast. I'm really looking forward to doing this every single week. So if you would like to put up your cue for consideration here on the podcast, and head over to 52cues.com in the weekly feedback thread, you can submit your cue for review, and I will be selecting one every single week and featuring them here on the podcast. Also, if you would like a cue review, then you could go to ismycueready.com or even 52cues.com and click on coaching. You can order up your own feedback video, 15-minute full HD stereo feedback that looks just like what we did. And speaking of looking just like what we did, we do this kind of feedback twice a week for the family subscribers, and so it's one of the perks of being a family member. But again, Tim, thank you so much for sending this along, and I can't wait to listen to more of our amazing community's music all throughout 2025. But that's going to do it for me this week. Again, thank you so much for joining me. I know you have a ton of options out there in the YouTube space, but just know that I appreciate you spending part of your day here with me. But you definitely want to tune in next week, and I'm pretty sure it's going to happen next week. I am navigating schedules, but I want to bring on a very, very special guest who's been on the podcast before, a publisher and a composer and a music supervisor. And we want to talk about, and I want to ask him the trends for 2025. What are libraries and publishers looking for in 2025? So you definitely want to tune in for that. And if you haven't, go ahead and click that subscribe and the bell to notify, because I talk about production and library music every single week. So we are off. We are off for 2025. Well, what I mean is we're not off. We are off to the races. 2025 has now begun. I am so glad to be with you on this production music journey. And just know, I know you're going to have an amazing year, and I hope you had an amazing week. If not, then I know that next week is going to be better. Why? Because I know and trust and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2025 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played in the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community, submitting your cue for review, or becoming a member subscriber of 52 Cues, head over to 52cues.com.